Welcome to another edition of Cannabis Capitol's Pop Politics. I'm your host, Chris Egger, and welcome. So tonight we're joined in our studio by a panel of industry leaders for California's regulated cannabis space. This Tuesday is the midterm election. The general election will be held throughout the state of California and the nation, of course. There's a lot on the table. But we're here tonight to kind of cover the issues that have gotten us to the November 8th election, the importance of some of the stuff that is going to be on the ballot on November 8th, and then we're going to talk a little bit about 2023 and where we see things heading moving forward. So with further ado, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves and kind of just tell you the name of the companies that they're working at, and then I'm going to start asking some questions once we get through those introductions. So to my left.
What's up, everybody? Shout out to Cannabis Capitol again. Thank you so much for bringing out everybody. We appreciate you. My name is Adam Hijazi. I'm on the board of directors of Long Beach Collective Association. I'm also the founder of the Green Room and the station in Long Beach.
All right. And to my right.
Hello, everybody. And thank you, Cannabis Capitol, for having us. Virgil Grant, wear multiple hats, policy writer, advocate, owner-operator of 3 licensed shops in city of LA, California Cannabis, name of the shops. 120-acre farm up north in southern Humboldt. Just left back in from Africa, so helping with Africa's policy there. Just glad to be here tonight to talk on important issues. Also creator of social equity for the city of Los Angeles. So
appreciate you being here, man. Really do. And finally, to the far right.
I don't know how you follow that, but now Blunt Brothers brands for the most part, and Cali Legends. Advocate and moving forward agendas and getting more licensing in cities, social equity included, and moving things forward and really getting this cannabis industry right on track.
And what companies? Give a little bit. I want to hear a little bit about that too.
I mean, we have Blunt Brothers, we have Iconic Farms, we have Pedeca that we went public out of Colombia, going into basically European Union and stuff like that, but. Really bringing it back to our roots where we started at, and that's kind of what we're looking forward to doing.
And Cali Legends.
Yes, sir.
All right. So for that, with this kind of diversity on the panel, we're going to be focusing on some of the upcoming November 8th stuff that we need to talk about, right? And so I'm going to start with Virgil tonight. And the reason I'm going to do that is because Los Angeles County is probably on the level of opening up legalization and legalized sales, the biggest one. So Virgil, you were instrumental in Los Angeles in setting their policy. I'm sure you've been looking at what the county's planning, right, and how that's going to go. So what's your feeling right now? Because I'm going to ask the whole panel, supporting taxes to open regulated access. We here at Cannabis Capitol have endorsed the measure to bring legalized access. It'll require a tax in Los Angeles County. But I want to hear your perspective as an owner-operator and as an activist.
my perspective is a little different. I sit on kind of both sides of the fence, but more more in the middle. I helped the County of Los Angeles early on form regulations for the county to open up, LA County being so large. It would have just been great. The unfortunate part is the taxation. And yes, we have to open up taxes to bring it in for legalization, but not at the level of taxation that the county wants to bring it in. Had you talked to me early on in the industry before Prop 64, this and that, I had a different attitude about it. And it was like, okay, let's tax it, let's go. But now that we've been through that, we're years later from that, and we feel the brunt of taxes every year, every month, every quarter. I refuse to support a measure that is highly taxing it coming in the gate. So unfortunately, I have to not support LA's county's taxation, and I actually voted no on it and told everybody that I knew to vote no on it, because what it does is it harms the industry. And those taxes, when they come in that way, are only going to go up, not down. So I have to reject that.
So what do you think LA County does if the tax fails at the ballot? They have all this regulatory structure that they're talking about implementing. Is the tax the requirement to get that access? Do they walk it back, do you think?
Yes, but what it is the people speaking loud and clear, which we have to do. Adam knows about this, and my guy here to the right knows as well. You have to start rejecting certain things and standing for certain things in this industry. It's no longer we want it like that anymore. No, it's how we want it, what we want it to look like. Rejecting that lets the county know, wait a minute, that's not what the people want. It's not what we want. We don't want to be taxed up the wazoo anymore. You're not going to use us as your cash cow to support your city, your county, your state, and we're the highest tax in the industry. We're just talking about that. Tax higher than oil, tax higher than alcohol, tax higher than anything. It's ridiculous.
So Chad, one of the points that you brought up, and I thought was really interesting, was some of these taxes that are on the ballot actually are for communities that already have passed legalization?
Yeah, some of them are definitely for already past legalization. San Diego County, for one. You already have 5 shops operating in San Diego County, so I don't understand why anyone would vote to say, let's start taxing ourselves and let's support a more tax when we're trying to lower our taxes. I mean, you got to support the ones that are precursors to try to get into some of these cities. But like I've said at the beginning, a citizen's vote and a citizen's voice is a lot more than anything. And I think we failed a little bit in 2022, and I think we should come back hard in 2024. And we push our own initiatives, and we go into more of these cities that should be opening up. I mean, it's just disappointing what we did in 2022. We can't be taxed, like he said, overtaxed more than anybody else. Like,
And
if we're
survive
the
as an
cash
industry.
cow, we are bringing in how much money they say that we're bringing into the state, and they're giving us no love.
Right. And by the way, you're out in the Inland Empire, and there's some cities out there that are making moves forward. I was really surprised that they're not putting taxes on the ballot this time around. Do you see any hope in that? I mean, Fontana being one of them, right?
I think some of the cities are going to take more of an approach, kind of like Cuday, maybe. Development agreement processes, looking at it as any other business coming into their city, and a business coming into a city agreeing on what they're going to be able to pay to that city in extra tax revenue, and to what they're able to do for that city, and not over push themselves to just say, hey, I can give you 15% of my business, here you go.
Right.
On top of that, you got to give the state, and then you got to give every other avenue. It's kind of sad and disappointing a little bit.
And I've always said that sales tax alone, if given the growth of the industry throughout the state, you'd see, I mean, I'd really be interested to see what kind of numbers in the Prop 215 compliant era, where it was just sales tax being paid by compliant retailers who didn't want to have the problems that came along with being a non-compliant retailer, right?
I highly doubt they're going to release those numbers at all, because it keeps it in their court.
That's right.
But if every city opened up and everybody just paid their regular sales tax per city,
And maybe an excise
I almost
tax that was
guarantee
fair
you
in
make
the
more
sense.
money overall in tax revenue than you would fucking keeping it the way it's going right now.
So, Adam, you heard Virgil say it, right? What do you think? You're an LA County voter. You live in the city of Long Beach, but everyone who is in the county, even though it only affects the unincorporated areas, right? Do you think, and knowing what you know now, that we can honestly say, so for Huntington Beach, for LA County, unlike San Diego County, it'll be the beginning of opening the doors to regulated shops. For San Diego County, I think they've talked about maybe expanding the number of shops that they'll allow in the county unincorporated areas, maybe. But, what are your thoughts? I mean,
Well, I mean, I'll kind of just kind of pick up where Chad left off. And the problem is when he's talking about that, we would make a lot more tax if we took these taxes out. But it's an oxymoron of a situation. It's the high taxes that's kind of not allowing for a legal industry to grow, right? It's just holding down the industry. That's why we're seeing declining in markets, and that's why we have the issue where 5 years later, we literally haven't grown as an industry, right? It just kind of stuck at that, whoever's willing to kind of get in. And, it really ties directly that if cities know that, less is more in the long run when it comes to understanding taxes. You have to have something reasonable. You have to have something, know that at the end of the day, the sad part is they really see it as this guy, or this guy making more money, right? But the reality of it, it's not that. And that's what they frame it as. The reality is it's a lot more expensive to patients and customers, right? Because at the end of the day, we don't pay the taxes, right? When you get your seller's permit, you're an agent for the state to collect the tax and pay it to them, right? So, and they got to get that message that it's the voters, it's the patients, it's the residents, it's the people that you're really plucking off all of these gains at the end of the day, right?
But you also do have to build that price into what a consumer can bear at the register, right? So at the end of the day, it is impacting the retailer as much as anything, right?
I mean, of course, but it impacts them because they're not coming, right? Because they're going somewhere else, right? Home grows this guy, that guy, grab an ounce from me, it's California, right? It's not going to be. But if that price, that 40% tax, right, came down, and then the other part of it, which is important, is allowing a bridge for the real people to get in with all these regulations that's coming in. That's why we're losing a lot of the great growers that we had, right, or the operators, or the people that really had the experience and the skill. It's because you just can't navigate this process or don't want to, I mean, it's not too late for that. And if a ballot does happen, which I completely support, because there's two parts. It's either you're doing a ballot or you have a legislation process. The legislation process is it's just walking through, thorns and sticks and, barefoot. It's a tough process to deal with. And you can only get so far so fast, and it's very frustrating. If you want to do a ballot, you can get more action, right? California is a big state. It's going to cost a lot of money. It's a big campaign, and that is a lot of also people to talk to. But
there's almost like 500 municipalities, right? And it's really local control that's been a huge issue for the competent rollout of legalization in the state, right? There's been so restrictive on market access to the consumer. Every other facet of the industry grew to serve the state, which approved legalization, right? So, gentlemen, I'm going to stick with Adam for a second because I noticed that Chad's very comfortable at the moment. And I'm going to ask you, Adam, one of the things that you, I know, over the course of the past year have been involved with the Long Beach Collective Association. There's been a number of actual reforms at the state level. Was 2022 a good year for us? Should Gavin Newsom still get some thanks for us for being somebody who supports legalization in theory, if not action? But how did it go this year?
I mean, there was, I guess you could say there was some wins. There was, right? I think there was wins. There was some important legislation that was getting pushed through that got, into a much better place because of the push that we did on the state. I think, one of the massive issues that still kind of has us pitted down is the taxes, of the excise tax specifically, and I think the biggest loss was the industry. We have a situation where we have people just pushing for cultivation tax, right? We had just pushing for excise tax, right? And then there was a group, unfortunately the minority was like, why don't you both just talk to each other, and if we both push them, we can actually both get them done, right? But then it became, no, it's either this one or this one. And when that happened on the state level, the state's gonna say, thank you. You know what I mean? And they're going to take that opportunity to just be like divided and be like, all right, cool, let's just do that, right? This one's going to be easier for us, because they always tend to do the easier, path. So I think that's going to be a big, So
to your point, the elimination of the cultivation tax, it did benefit people, even in Long Beach, right? Cultivating.
Benefited me. I cultivate. I love it. I'm thankful. I love it. It's the only agricultural.
It's the excise tax that's hitting the consumer.
Only agricultural product in California that's taxed is cannabis. Keep that into perspective, right? So there isn't any other ones that's taxed on the growing level. So just by default, it's just I don't know how that worked out. right? But that's been corrected, so that's a step in the right direction. But the problem is they shifted $90 million that they were getting from the cultivation tax, and then they're going to raise the excise tax anywhere from 14 to 22% starting January 1st, which will bring them about $160 million. So they're up $50 million. Right? Who's paying that $60 million tax increase? That's going to go back right now, an issue that's going to get faced on January 1st. That's a reality, right? Because at this point, distributors are not going to be taking the excise tax anymore. So retailers will be the only people that pay taxes in the state of California.
Wow. Hey, Chad, we were talking and you brought up 2016. I remember how unified it felt the industry was at the time. And what Adam was just bringing up, the divide and conquer. I mean, what are your thoughts right now? Somebody who organized political action committees back in the day for successful runs, was part of the Prop 64 yes vote. What are your thoughts on what's going on in that arena?
I mean, it's the same thing you see throughout the industry. It's ego. It's ego on the political side, all the associations that were made. Everyone that got a license didn't get a license. You see it throughout the entire thing. You see discontent for the people that tried to get a license, didn't get a license. And then you see the people that did get a license complaining about the people that didn't get a license. You know what I'm saying? So
like
there's no coming together anymore. Like everybody, we raised $30 million for Prop 64 to be fucked. One. But I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
We raised $30 million, but we can't raise $500,000 for this city, $300,000 for this city, $150,000 for this city. Every city's a different size. We don't got to raise it, and the citizen vote is the best thing in California that we got, or we're going to be controlled by the people that think that they understand this industry, which are the same people that came in and dumped hundreds of millions of dollars in this industry, including Canada, that are all going bankrupt and belly up. Look at the MSOs that tried to come in. Look at Truly. I mean, they're closing down shops. Like, nobody understands it. Nobody understands this market. Everyone thinks they're going to freaking make the best product out there, and they're going to sell it for this price point, and just because they market it a certain way, they understand the people. You know what I'm saying? And the best markets aren't the markets that are the highest waged markets right now. People go to this for medicine. People go to this for medicine because medicine's not available in certain markets. So they spend, instead of whatever they're spending on their Oxycontins or everything else, they're going to spend their $20 a day on a flower that's not going to make them feel the way the Oxys are making them feel, and stuff like that. And also that they don't have health insurance they're going to cover. A
lot of people have talked about a return to the Prop 215 era, where the medical recommendation, right, and it should entitle you to essentially access, right, wherever you find it, wherever you can get to it, and wherever you can do it, respectful of the local time, place, and manner laws, right? But
I'll tell you one more thing. It said safe. It actually said affordable and safe access, right? Affordable and safe access.
And basically in that era of time, people paid sales tax. We were talking about that earlier, just tonight, what those numbers were and how many people actually complied with it. I don't know. And that leads us to another important topic tonight. So this is the midterm election, right? And it's a national election. We're all California voters here, and this is a discussion usually about California cannabis priorities. But a big priority for California cannabis, Virgil, I'm going to ask you to dip in a little bit. I know you're aware of the East Coast movement in the social equity space and what they've been doing to try to prioritize that at the federal level. And that's Senator Cory Booker, right, from New Jersey, and Chuck Schumer from New York. And one of the senators from Oregon have proposed some legislation that didn't have enough momentum. They're talking about creating Safe Banking Plus. Do you have any thoughts about what happens after the midterm election? Do you think we get that this year in the lame duck session? And how big would that be if we do?
It would be huge if we did. I was on that first push for safe banking, that first round. It fell short this round. And what happens, and we all know it, excuse me, from the history of the cannabis industry, we all know that we'll get so far this time, we'll try it again, we'll get further, and then we'll try it again, and finally it'll pass. I believe personally it's going to take one more round and then it'll pass. I would love to see it pass this round. I just don't think it has enough teeth in it. I don't think it has enough push behind it, but it will have more than last time. Excuse me. So when it comes to that, Cory Booker, and I've communicated with him. He's been very intricate in pushing a lot of this legislation. He understands more than he did a few years before, because he was kind of narrow in his thinking about, well, if I do it, this is what'll happen, or so on and so forth. And my thing to him was, if you don't, you still have these atrocities that's going on. People still not being able to carry their cash to the bank and do normal banking, get normal loans. When you take away banking from an industry, we can't get a conventional loan. We can't benefit from banking our money.
And absolutely, the SBA and many programs, when we talk about this, right, the point I've always made is for equity to truly resonate, right, you need to have access to, traditional prime rate business capital, right? And the Small Business Administration Loan Program will probably do more to assist equity applicants than even, what they're doing now, which is basically waiving maybe some licensing fees, but they're not giving them any foundational support through normal channels, right?
Yeah, and that's a huge issue. When you put equity into play, you really put a certain population at a disadvantage, and inequity means nothing, because then it's an inequity, it's not an equity program.
In New York, they've actually directly addressed that, right, by targeting $200 million to securing the real estate, because Chad, right, the most expensive part of opening a regulated cannabis business is getting into the right real estate, and that's a huge challenge, right? So part of the discussion that Cory Booker was having was, we don't know what the new Congress will look like, and that was where the whole full push towards getting Safe Banking Plus, which is the addition of some social equity components, right, done in this lame duck. So I'm hopeful that, do you see, and I'm going to ask each one of you gentlemen, do you see a difference in the legalization movement at the federal level, if there is a huge shift in the House of Representatives at least, and if not that, both that and the Senate?
I do, and I do in a lot of sense. I think that we've gone far enough for them to understand, that we've uncovered the fact that it does have medicinal value, that we have, 47 states now that have some form of legalization.
Right, and all 50 if you count CBD from hemp-derived sources.
Exactly.
Right.
So I think we're so far gone with that now. I see the feds either descheduling this or doing something, making some major move within the next year or so. I see that personally, yeah.
I mean, I think descheduling. I think they're gonna hit a 4 to 6 year headache trying to figure out every state's regulations versus what they're gonna do federally to implement everything across the board. Or you're just gonna everything's just gonna stay in the state anyways. It's just gonna add an extra.
Yeah,
tax
and then
to
I
it.
think
So
it'll be like
at
alcohol,
that point,
where
there's
they-
got to be a figure that out. But
States have, some states though won't allow interstate alcohol commerce, right? And
yeah,
then some states do.
I think you're going to still end up seeing it's going to be almost by a state's laws type of thing, whether they're going to allow it or not allow it. Percentages, not allow percentages, like Utah's alcohol percentages versus ours and stuff like that. But I think you're going to see it's going to be at least a 10-year plan to actually execute the federal plan. But I think, descheduling it, I think, is on the next couple year agenda for
And that
sure.
deals with the dreaded 280E, right? And it also, I've had it told to me that, the excise taxes are not what are going to kill the business ultimately, but you're starting to hear these audits now that's the 280E, and that's where safe banking and also access to Wall Street capital. Adam, do you have any thoughts on the safe banking federal landscape?
I mean, I do. I actually really do. So I got some real concerns with federal legalization. But I'm going to point out, before I point out the concerns, the two beneficial, most important things that's going to come out of it on a mainstream level, right? One is hopefully the decriminalization and getting people out of jail situation, right? I think that is something that can't move fast enough, right? And I think that's going to be huge, right? And then the second part is the amount of medicinal research and development that will come out of that is going to, hopefully finally give cannabis the chance that it could to really understand the components. I mean, like over the last few years, really digging in, we found out there's like 400 different chemical compounds in the plant. People know THC and CBD, right, for the most part. So I think a lot will come out of it. My main concerns is that, big pharma is going to take over the medicinal world, right? I think that, it's really going to affect the small, medium-sized business. You're going to see that big type of, coming in. I would also say, taxation is going to be a problem, right? If you think the state's a problem, what about the feds? I mean, they're going to put a tax of some sort. I'm going to only assume that, because if they're going to take 280E, they're going to figure something out. They're going to figure something out, what that looks like. And I think another benefit will be interstate commerce. It is going to be an issue to figure out. It's going to take time from different states and different stuff. But there's a big concern. Because at that level, this conversation of what the plant and what we started off with, and you talk about the history of cannabis, well, just completely disappear, right? For the most part, it's going to be big time lobbyists, big time money, commodities, markets. It's gonna kind of deflower the plant, to say. I think.
You think there'll still be a boutique artisanal industry though that emerges from that?
Oh yeah, there will be. I mean, and that's gonna depend on that business, that person that knows how to grow, that person that knows how to extract, and to do that. You can't just market and have a price point that you think is going to go in the market and you're going to become the next whatever.
Well, and we had a discussion earlier, and I don't know if you remember me bringing up the idea of predictive outcome. So in the true pharmaceutical industry, they're targeting 99.9% accuracy to predicted outcome from taking something. So when they concentrate and sensitize it, when they tell somebody, hey, if you take 3 of these a day, take them for the next 6 weeks, you're going to live, right? That kind of situational predictability. Whereas in a holistic wellness mindset, right, and the medicinal benefits of cannabis in that arena, we can all admit, Charlotte's Web was created for Charlotte Figi because they found one strain in the genetics that served her optimally, right? And she became predictive with that product, but every plant has a different composition and so forth. So I think there's still, for me, the adult use is almost, I would consider, a medicinal holistic wellness on a mental wellness level, mental health level. But, I'm not as afraid of, I think it'll be good if the plant can be pharmaceutically relevant, but I think it'll have its holistic wellness. And I don't know if you agree with that.
Of course. I mean, look, right now you say adult use sales are 90% medicinal or 10. It depends, maybe 95.5, right? It's just on where, but
the government considers it.
As your designation, right? That comes in, but the reality that 90% are patients. Right? There are people that are coming in, they got problems, they got issues, whatever it is, whether it's mental health, this, that, whatever the ailment, or just overall wellness. So there's still 100%, but I'm excited because, look, the reality is I don't have $250 million to invest in research into this plant, right? But if somebody that does and finds something great that can help people and make it, and kind of eventually get back to what it is, we already see a drop in pharmaceutical sales. We already see a drop in opiate overdoses, right? I mean, you're seeing like these, there's an alternative, future for medicine or wellness, and that has to be sustainable, and I think that, cannabis can do a lot once you kind of get those types of companies behind it. So, it's advocacy for the plant too.
Right. So, Chad,
Can I kind of jump on that?
Yeah, please do.
I think Canada tried that, right? I mean, how many hundreds of millions of dollars that they put into research and everything else they were trying to do on the pharmaceutical side and didn't hit the mark. I mean, straight up. I mean, they're going to try.
Israel has, right? Israel has
they're
actually
really.
created.
It's a
created
city.
some.
Israel's a city. I mean, it's a country, but it's a size
Understood,
of a city. Yeah,
but the
but I'm
level of
saying
their
Canada
research
tried the level of research that everybody's done, and to take it to where the pharmaceutical companies run everything, and they spent hundreds of millions of dollars and closed how many facilities, and then resold their companies that they absorbed for pennies on the dollar back to the companies they absorbed, because there's a certain, you can only get to a certain size, and you can only do a certain thing, especially with this plant. You know this plant.
No, for real.
And the people that the patients that understand this plant, you know what I'm saying, and understand it has to be moved. You can't overcharge people for it, you know, and it's there to move, and it's there to be there. It grows continuously, you know. So we're all afraid pharmaceuticals are going to be here, but they've been here. Big Tobacco's been here. Like they all been trying, and they're failing.
And some
Is
of the
it
beverage
when
too.
you say that, do you say it in the sense of like them finding that type of medicinal product that will help with X, ailment or sickness, that they're not able to find that connection? Or
No, I mean they have that. They have that in Canada. They figured that out, but they can't sell it the way they want to sell it. And why take apart a plant that has 400 different compounds in it already? Why extract a certain compound out of it individually when those 400 compounds all together, none of it's
Can
going
be
to hurt you.
naturally
It's just going to do
supplied
better
and
for
ingested,
you.
right?
So they're trying this, and
It's
they've been
naturally
trying
great.
it. I'm just saying.
I'm not a white coat,
They're trying and they're failing. It's time for some people to realize that.
And
We got a big voice.
One of the things that I look at too, so where does descheduling put the industry? I mean, where do you see 2023 if this all starts to come to fruition? The current President Biden has directed studies to be implemented about the descheduling or rescheduling, right? But I think descheduling is what everyone thinks will be best. And then we have safe banking and stuff like that. Is that de facto legalization at that point?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked that question because I was going to speak on that. Descheduling takes it out of the hands of pharmaceuticals if we understand descheduling, right? So if we deschedule it to the right schedule, and that's 4 versus 3 or 2, and we take it right out of the hands of the pharmaceutical, and it can become one of those things like a microbrewery, where we do our own boutique growing, boutique selling, so on and so forth, like we're doing now in a micro business. Pharmaceuticals will always do research, which is what Adam was talking about. The research part will be good. They will probably take a small portion, as Chad said, but the industry will still belong to us.
And there can still be a coincide, right? You can still have pharmaceutical working towards a Schedule 2 or 3 level product, right? Where you'd have to have the prescription and shouldn't be taken for consumer, enjoyment, right? But then you'll have the holistic wellness and the medicinal and adult use consumer market that can exist in the same space. Don't you agree?
Nah, not really. I'm just a little different when it comes to that. Pharmaceuticals have a tendency of screwing stuff up. If you look at what they did with Marinol, right? They've had Marinol for how long? And it does nothing. I have my kid's grandmother who she was taking Marinol and it did nothing for her. So she would always come to me for the real deal Holyfield, the herb, right? So I would make sure.
Well, what was the GW pharmaceutical, though? It was the sublingual spray for epileptic seizure. That to me had success. It's in the UK. It's not here in the United States. But I think that, to your guys' point, they'll get better at finding ways to make those things happen, right?
Yeah, those are things. Yeah, and that's why I said that there'll be a small percentage, maybe that 1 or 2% of those products that they will take, carry, and make, and do their research behind it. but they're not going to go out and become cultivators. That's what's not going to happen. They're going to
Chad,
leave that to us.
would you consider, Chad, Rick Simpson oil, that style of concentrate, something almost pharmaceutical in nature? I mean, the way that it was used for a lot of people with cancer and issues like they're looking for the medicinal benefit.
I mean, like Virgil said, I mean, it's really a small percentage that really needs that type of dosage and stuff like that. And there's reasons why we're finally getting to be able to donate to those type of medical patients in California, which is nice that we can give back to those people. But there's a reason why you guys own retail shops. What's your highest concentration of sales? Flour. There's an answer.
Flour. I mean, I think you can even see it across everywhere. I mean, I was just telling somebody like, 2009 at the time, and time we were selling, it was 100% flour that we were selling. I wasn't selling edibles. I was just selling flour. That's all I sold, But, and then that increased. I mean, even till today, we were just talking, there's certain products that it's just a very low percentage, But people are not used to it. There's a lot of education around. You got to understand we're still much in infant stage, and what we're doing here will eventually bubble up. This is long term, But flour definitely takes the cake.
So, Virgil, one of the things I wanted to ask you while, because I know that for Chad and Adam, this will probably be interesting as well. You spent some time, as you mentioned, in the continent of Africa, multiple countries, my understanding. How did that, number one, tell us a little bit about what's going on over there, but number two, how did that inform your perspective on what you could bring of value to those countries as they look at legalization, and looking back here at the United States, things that it may have pointed out to you as you come back to the market before an election?
Thanks for asking. One, it was a beautiful trip. I enjoyed myself. Going back to the motherland, I can't even express how humbling, and it was just a beautiful journey. I was asked to come to Africa or go to Africa to help with their cannabis, hemp, and CBD program in the country of Zambia and Zimbabwe. Went to Johannesburg and the DNR. Really changed my perspective as a black man in America, changed my perspective of what the real opportunities are. For me personally, and for just black people in America. Because one thing, I sat and talked with a doctor, and she had left coming from the States, and she made it back home. She is their hemp regulator. One thing that she has said to me that I didn't think about until later on after the meeting, she said, I never had to think about being black. Never thought about that. And so I didn't, it just kind of went from one side to the next. And then as I sat in the car and was riding, I was like, damn, she never thought about being black. That's something we got to think about here in America, right? But she didn't have to think about that because everybody up there looked like her. You know what I'm saying? So that was just something that kind of hit me, that made me just kind of open my mind up. But the business opportunity, we're probably 20, 30 years thought process-wise as businessmen and women here in America ahead of a lot of countries in Africa. And so the opportunity that I saw out there, and I had a guy he was from Iran. I was locked up with. Oh yeah, I was locked up, y'all. When I was locked up in the feds, this guy from Iran, he told me, he said, hey man, it's not just money in America, because he owned businesses outside of America. And so he had that experience and opportunity. And I'm listening to him and I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. But shoot, now I see what he's saying. It is, man, there's so much opportunity outside of LA, Compton, where I grew up, California, United States. When you travel abroad, which I recommend everybody to do that. Travel abroad, wherever you like to go, you see something totally different and opens up your perspective of just life in general and where you can go, your possibilities. So I stayed there, worked with the government closely, worked with the chiefs, and there are 26 chiefdoms in Zambia. The chiefs run the country. So to give you a perspective, the chiefs are your Congress, all right? And the Congress don't let the president do nothing not unless they say so, right? Got our president handcuffed. Because if Congress doesn't pass it, it doesn't get passed. Well, that's the chiefs. And you have to, even the president bows down to the chiefs, not bow down, literally gets on his knees and bow down to the chiefs in Africa. That's how it's set up in a lot of the regions in Africa. So there's a lot of a different way that things are done. But I got the blessing of the Chiefs Foundation. I have a joint venture with. So I am now a part of Zambia and its program, and to help them form and build their hemp, cannabis, and CBD program. So,
No, that's
super
wild.
amazing.
Congratulations.
Super amazing.
I mean, big time congratulations. So, gentlemen, we've been doing this discussion for a minute, and before we're done here, I want to get into one thing. So, this will lead us into thinking about 2023 and some of our priorities here in California. Chad, you and I worked together early on passing municipal legislation in some communities. We got a few of those on the ballot this time that the industry's put out there. First and foremost, what are your thoughts about the initiatives in the South Bay and here in Southern California that are citizen qualified, that aren't tax related, but will put operations in place in those cities? And secondly, what are your thoughts about doing more of that in 2023 and 2024?
I feel like you trapped me with the South Bay comment right there.
In a bit, right? Well, but they're on the ballot this Tuesday, and this is a Tuesday election show.
I mean, if it allows for licensing, let's let it go. But I think, looking into 2023 into 2024, I think the industry as a whole needs to figure themselves out. I think we 100% need to just push as many citizen ballots as possible. And the people who are going to speak, they already spoke in 2016, and it's only gotten better. We know every city how much they freaking voted in for Prop 64, and it's only gotten better. So let's go. And to try to corner the market for whoever wants to corner the market for themselves, that's their prerogative. I like competition. I like Wild Wild West. If you're good, you're good. If you're not good, you're not good. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's pushing into any city. It just doesn't have to do with South Bay. It's all the cities. And a lot of the initiatives that have been pushed for citizen initiatives were written, especially in the last couple of years. That have moved in certain cities forward. They have their own agendas and stuff like that. But I think the industry needs to come together as a whole, figure this out. Let's just write them up. One for every 10,000, one for every 12,000, one for every 15,000, whatever we want to do.
Pass them in each city, right?
And pass them in each city
at scale.
And just go after retail. Everything else is going to follow. And you add social equity into that. You add a little bit of shared use space per maybe county, so it allows even better than social equity, so they get a little leg up. And we just push it as an industry as a whole. The way we push Prop 64, let's go. Because nothing else is going to happen until everybody combines with each other. Like he said, the reason why the cultivation tax and excise tax didn't pass together because they didn't freaking talk to each other. Yeah, I'd love
competitive silos that everyone gets into eventually.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we look forward into the coming years too, and the new regulations that are coming forward, new medicines coming forward, maybe psychedelics, that most likely will pass through the same system that cannabis has already passed through. Why make another entirely new regulated fucking marketplace? We can add a medicine to the already regulated marketplace you already have. So I think coming together in that mindset as well, not allowing the pharmaceuticals to just grasp that one up too, is a fucking good key to fucking add into your bottom line.
Right. Well, listen, everybody, one of the things I like to do at the end of these interviews is I like to say to each one of the guests, is there anything that I didn't ask you to talk about tonight or we didn't cover? Is there anything? I'm going to start with you, Adam, to my left, and then we'll move in the way we did introductions. But, just in your closing thoughts for tonight and what's important about Tuesday, what's important about a year ahead, or anything that you'd like to talk about.
I mean, look, just kind of a little bit about, what you were saying. Look, not all licenses, not all policies were created equal, right? I support access. I support legalization, right? But at the same time, you got to be careful because, like, back in the day when you were looking at policy, you wanted to come up with the best policy that benefited everybody that was involved, because you had to do that to try to get a city to move along, right? Today, everybody's moved along, so you're coming in and doing it. So not all policies are created equal, right? Some are better, because at the end of the day, after each policy, you get a license, right? So you're gonna get your end result is a license, but who gets it, how they get it, and what type of market is open. I think for 2023, to your point, it's just we're on the bottom of a mountain looking up. Not everybody's talking with each other. I can already see, everybody's going to kind of get into that, silo that used to. And, I hope that with everybody's help, just bring them to the table, have these conversations, would be a great step. But, and here's the other thing. We don't have to have everybody either, to be honest, because you're never going to get everybody. But if you get enough good people, enough associations, enough people that are pushing, right? I think, and as long as what you're pushing is going to help everybody anyways, at the end of the day, I think you're going to be a good place.
Awesome. I appreciate you for sharing that. Virgil, anything you'd like to add to our conversation tonight that we didn't cover already? Looking forward to 2023 or on Tuesday, anything to say?
Yeah, I'll just piggyback off of what Adam said. I think, the industry needs to come back together. I come from the old school, the very beginning. If anybody knows my history, at one of the first shops in the history of medical marijuana in LA. So I come from that beginning. Plus I come from even farther back than that, hustling on the streets of Compton. So we were united back when we passed it in 1996, all the way to the early 2000s. We came together. When we passed Measure M in the city of LA, I brought everybody together. It was all of the organizations that were fighting. When I came home, I united all of the organizations. And then we got Measure M passed at 80.4%. So when you come together, this is the type of stuff you can do in order for us to pass something that's sensible. And we can't forget about the patients. It's not about just us being in business, opening up shop. And that's the problem. That's how a lot of us are out here thinking with these voter initiatives. We're not thinking about the end user that has to walk through your door, and how are they going to feel? See, I'm an owner-operator. I'm in my shop every day. All three of them. I make it to every shop every day. I'm not an absent owner operator, so I get to communicate with the patients on a day-to-day basis, the customers. They get to see me and talk to me. And so how would I feel as an owner to look that person in the face knowing that I didn't do anything to benefit them, and they're coming to spend money with me when they can go somewhere else, because I'm not their only choice, right? So I appreciate anybody that comes and walks through my door and gives me that opportunity to service them. But we got to do them a service too, not just to service them like I do across the counter, but make sure that they can get, like we said, affordable access. We now have safe access. Can we give them affordable access? And so that's something I think we need to work on moving forward. I do see voter initiatives working better than city initiatives, because then we can control the narrative. We just, as Chad said, egos have to leave, and we have to do this for the greater good of the industry. That's what I've always fought for.
And the culture, right? The industry and the culture.
Absolutely.
To a degree.
The culture, the greater good of the patient, the consumer, the industry. We all make up the industry, because we wouldn't exist. Adam, myself, we wouldn't exist as owners, operators, if we didn't have the consumers. And we have to understand and know that every day. And I understand that to the highest degree.
Well, I appreciate you being here tonight and joining us. And Chad, for you, right, is there anything I didn't ask of you to cover or we didn't get into that you'd like to share? Just your closing thoughts for tonight.
I mean, I think everything's been said, man. Between everybody, Virgil and Adam, man. Great at being on the panel with you guys. Definitely a blessing. And thank you, Cannabis Capitol. And let's just figure this next out. We got 2 years. We got to vote next Tuesday. We vote hard. We go forward. But we're still less than 30% of the cities. And until we're where we should be, we got a hard 2 years, because until that happens, we're still going to have headaches with certain markets. You're still going to have what's going on. There's not going to be a consensus like it needs to be done.
And I appreciate you being here, Chad White. Thank you so much. So listen, everybody, that's been this installment of Cannabis Capitol's Pop Politics. I want to remind you all that Tuesday, November 8th is the midterm election. If you live in Southern California and LA County and San Diego County, if you live in cities like Huntington Beach or El Segundo or Hermosa Beach, if you live even in the Northern California area in Sacramento County and all the many cities that have cannabis on the pot, we at Cannabis Capitol believe that you should vote yes on anything that moves forward legal access to cannabis in the state of California. We've stated a mission and a goal that we'd like to see regulated cannabis sales in every city and municipality throughout the state. It's high time, literally and figuratively, that we made that happen. So we're here to support that effort, to bring this common ground for these gentlemen to come here and hopefully move that agenda forward. So with that being said, thank you for also being part of that agenda. And we will look forward to seeing you in December for a look back at the results of this election and hopefully some more reports on the federal legalization momentum. But until then, be safe, be happy, and we'll see y'all soon. Thanks so much for joining us.